Hello, BookTube. I went out and about this morning. I had an appointment in the middle of Boston, and I figured as long as I was there, the appointment wasn't all that pleasant, and what I tend to do in circumstances like that is give myself something pleasant as a reward. And I was close to Barnes & Noble, which is the United States' only remaining big retail bookstore chain. And the Barnes & Noble in question at the Prudential Mall is the only one left in Boston. Aside from, there's a store connected with the Boston University Bookstore. The Boston University Bookstore is a Barnes & Noble, but this is an official thing. It's not part of a school or anything like that. And it's also a Barnes & Noble where I worked for years. I left the bookselling world while I was a bookseller at that Barnes & Noble. That was a long, long time ago. It's a beautiful place, and it is currently undergoing a sort of floor plan revamp, as James Daunt from Waterstones. He recently took over Barnes & Noble and is slowly, it would already have happened by now if it weren't for the pandemic, but he is slowly revamping what Barnes & Noble is, what it looks like, what the experience shopping there is. And I have a whopping great employee discount. So I thought, why not go and wander around Barnes & Noble and see what you can find? And I did find some stuff that I want to show you. The first thing is a romance novel. I found a romance novel. This is a Loveless, Texas novel called Unforgiven by Jay Crowder, or Crownover. About a cool, tough sheriff who had his heart broken a long time ago, but has recovered his mojo and is a little bit stony as a result. And of course, the woman that broke his heart comes back into his life in this novel. Fairly hefty thing. I noticed on the shelf that there were a few Loveless, Texas novels on the shelf. I don't think I've ever read any of them. I'm not sure that I've ever got this author in the mail. So I'll give it a try. Ordinarily, me shopping in the aisles of for mass market paperbacks in a bookstore would almost certainly have resulted in either Star Trek or a Regency romance. But Star Trek apparently is not published in mass market anymore. All the latest Star Trek novels that I've ever seen have been the larger trade paperback size, and those I can get from the publisher. It feels a little grabby to ask for a little mass market paperback, although it shouldn't, because they're $10 a piece now. But nevertheless, I didn't get one of those, and I also didn't get a Regency romance thanks to Sarah at the Bookish Knitter, who loves the cowboy romances and has managed to infect me in the course of 2019-2020. So I have a contemporary cowboy romance. We shall see what we shall see. And then I got a bunch of periodicals. I got a block of square-bound science fiction magazines that I love so much, the latest fantasy and science fiction. What do we have here? Gregor Hartman, Serena Dory, Albert Chowdhury, Matthew Hughes. I don't know any of those names. And then we have Analog, of course, the great Analog. Who do we have here? Charles Choi, Julie Novakova, Harry Turtlev. It's a terrific cover. I really like that. And Asimov's. Also a terrific cover. Who do we have here? Suzanne Palmer, Robert Reed, of course, is in here. Christine Catherine Rush, Frank Wilde. And there you have. That is also a neat cover. I subscribed to these magazines. All three of them, I believe. Just a couple of weeks ago, I went to the website and because I figured I was having Mark Richardson and his wife go hunting for these things and get me extra copies, or I was having my surly houseboy swing by a bookstore and look for them. And I thought, if you're going to be that much of a bother to other people, why don't you just subscribe? The magazine would prefer it if you subscribed anyway. So I did, and I never know how that's going to work. I never know, is the magazine going to get the subscription? Are they going to process it? If they do, how long is it going to take? I haven't checked my bank balance to see if those charges actually went through or anything like that. I figure, what's the difference? I like all three of these. I've had great reading experiences from all three of them. If I give them a little extra money in December by buying what ends up being duplicates, that's fine by me. And then I also got Book Forum, which is a great literary review journal that I don't subscribe to. And this one's full of great stuff, just full of reviews that are of interest to me, either because I want to read the book in question or because I already have. There's, for instance, a really good piece by Michael Robbins on the Jack Reacher novels, on Lee Child's Jack Reacher novels. And Michael Robbins ends with this passage, just fantastic. There are authors who don't so much muddy the distinction between genre and literary fiction as prove it illusory. John le Carré, Patricia Highsmith, Eric Ambler, Ursula Le Guin, Graham Greene, John Crowley, Samuel Delany, Gene Wolfe, Larry McMurtry. That's not a spectrum with Proust at one end and Nicholas Sparks at the other. There are only the different things we want from books, the different reasons we come to them at different times. Fantastic. That's fantastic. The Childs, I guess Lee Child writes with a son or daughter. The Childs write escapist action fantasy, which is one thing I've wanted from fiction since the A-Team was on the air. For many people, what we read is bound up with a sense of who we want to be. Yes, sometimes very unhealthily so. For many people, what we read is bound up with a sense of who we want to be. In high school, I wanted to be a certain kind of person, so I already knew I was going to read all the big, serious novels. Ulysses, War and Peace, Moby Dick, Middlemarch, Gravity's Rainbow, In Search of Lost Time, The Brothers Karamazov, because you had to read them if you wanted to be that kind of person. That's a perfectly human reason to read, at least initially, but actually reading those books teaches you that it's a reason best left behind. Auden quips that the adolescent has to pretend that he enjoys War and Peace a little more than he actually does. And once you've become the kind of person who really does enjoy War and Peace, maybe you can also get to the point where when someone asks you what you are reading, you say Jurassic Park or The Hunger Games, and you don't feel the need to make excuses. Very true. Very true. So that was really good. I imagine that it would have been even more enjoyable with a bigger Jack Reacher fan than me. There were a couple of other things here that really did. Oh yes, Hannah Black reviews True Crimes and Misdemeanors by Jeffrey Toobin, and this book forum issue is dated December, January, February, and you figure, this might be a little bit old copy, but not that old. I find it hard to believe that this piece was written before Jeremy Toobin disgraced himself by pleasuring himself in a Zoom meeting while being recorded by the fellow people in the Zoom meeting. I would imagine that he'll never publish another book. I certainly think that he'll never be treated seriously again as a legal expert on any venue, written or broadcast, and that anybody who writes a big 2-page review of a book of his, if he does write a book, will spend most of it talking about that. I think that's only natural, and in this case, only just. And as far as I know, Hannah Black never mentions it in the course of this piece. So either this piece was written so long ago that it hadn't happened yet, or she seems to think that it's not important to talk about when reviewing his book, and I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. We're not talking about somebody here who jaywalked, and we're not talking, despite Jeffrey Toobin's incredibly self-serving and deceitful public apology, we're not talking about somebody who did something accidentally. We're talking about somebody who pushed a boundary to see what he could get away with in extremely exploitative terms, in extremely abusive terms to everyone around him, to everyone he was with. I think the whole thing was completely intentional. I think it was completely voluntary. I think it was completely malicious. I think the only thing that surprised Jeremy Toobin was the backlash, that it became something. I'd be willing to bet that if his friends and associates were willing to be indiscreet or to tell tales out of school or whatnot, I'd be willing to bet this wouldn't be the first time that he's done something like this. Only this is the first time where it caught him, where it cost him something. And I think, given the nature of the offense, if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't expect me to go into detail. Just Google his name. Thankfully, it's the only thing that will come up. But I think that if you are guilty of such an offense, especially if it was intentional, as I believe it was, then it should be the only thing about you for the rest of your life. Certainly, even if we want to be more forgiving than that and say that, Jeffrey Toobin was a first-rate scholar, he's a first-rate legal mind, and whether it was intentional or not, it's in the past now, and what if he writes a big new book? Okay, that's a very forgiving way to look at things. I know that I would not have the strength if he did that, and I was commissioned to write that book. I would not have the strength to simply not mention it at all. So I don't know if with the timing of this piece, maybe it was written before that happened and the editors just decided, let's not amend it. But there was also here Christian Lorenzen, who's a fantastic book critic. Here reviews Inside Story by Martin Amis. Amos's new book that I just I grappled with it obsessively, pretty much all year long. And he has a great paragraph here. There is, especially for a longtime reader of Amos, an irresistible charm at work in this book. To think of a young Christopher Hitchens having grimly dialectical love affairs is silly, but it sets the imagination going. This novel is very funny, often because the humorous sits in close proximity to the self-consciously ponderous. The reader who submits to this charm will be rewarded. After hundreds of pages of offhand party-going, name-dropping, Larkin quoting, Russian author citing, and Holocaust contemplating, a design emerges. Improbably, Amos makes brilliant use of the September 11th attacks not merely as a black sucking hole of historical tragedy, with which he developed an unfruitful obsession, indulged by all too many editors and producers happy to have him around to pontificate, but as a structural device. After 9/11 transpires and Amos's friends start to die, Bellow of Alzheimer's afflicted old age in 2003, Hitchens of esophageal cancer in 2011, the novel enters an elegiac mode of tender comedy and considerable beauty. I like that. I think that is true in a couple of different ways. The first being that, yeah, like so much of Martin Amos, this book is for insiders, and will reward them. How much of Amos do you need to know to get the most out of this book? But also, I would agree that there's a tone shift in the book. I'm not sure that I would locate it exactly at the 9/11 attacks, but there's a tone shift that changes the reading experience. I'm probably not done reading the thing. I've read it a few times now. The biggest disappointment in this issue was Colm Tóibín reviewing Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart. You would think, for a whole number of reasons, that would be a perfect pairing, but Colm Tóibín spends almost all of his review just incomprehensibly waffling on about Scottish novels, about what the Scottish novel is, the state of the Scottish novel today, all that sort of thing. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And it since it's the huge bulk of the story, there was it was a singly unsatisfying read. It certainly wasn't a review of Shuggie Bain, not at all. But there was also a piece here. Rebecca Panovka reviews a book that came out from Cambridge, from MIT Press, that I never got, called Wikipedia at 20, Stories of an Incomplete Revolution. It's a history of, sort of an oral history or a collection of essays about different stages of Wikipedia's history. And there's a great passage in here. Wikipedia is far from the only website with aspirational corporate rhetoric. But where social media companies' statements read like hokum, all but entirely disconnected from their actual monetized functions, Wikipedia does seem to do what it says it does. There is no hustle, no money-making operation running parallel to the user's experience. Wikipedia does not sell advertisements. It has no personalized feeds or viral content or manipulative algorithms. My entry on Donald Trump reads exactly the same as yours. In 2020, you'd be hard-pressed to find scholars willing to parrot pablum of a Facebook or a Google in a book for a university press. The essays collected in Wikipedia at 20, meanwhile, are unabashedly idealistic. Contributors write of Wikipedia as, quote, a great human endeavor, the largest collective project ever, a utopian project, a step on the road to an imagined utopia, and even a useful utopia for conceiving how people could cooperate productively without market relations. You get the sense, reading through the various contributions, of stumbling on the last corner of the internet where early Silicon Valley optimism is substantiated. As more and more of the internet is consolidated, discredited, and co-opted by capital, Wikipedia begins to look like a vestige of a bygone era. With its volunteer-run editing process and its open-source ethos, the site may be the one success of an early internet ethos, crowdsourced, democratized information sharing with little centralized control, that otherwise has come to look like empty rhetoric. Wikipedia is produced independent of capital and is not only competitive, but has fully demolished its competitors. Encyclopedia companies that recruit and pay experts to write authoritative entries, those are gone. Wikipedia functions on unpaid labor without being exploitative because no one stands to gain much from the addition of minutia to the entries for meta joke or list of sandwiches or cultural history of the buttocks. And the piece goes on like that. It really made me think about Wikipedia. I've been thinking about it anyway because Wikipedia is in the middle right now of a little fundraising. If you go to Wikipedia now, and if you are a freelancer, you do several times a day. You'll see the little red box saying, don't scroll by, pay, please contribute. We don't sell ads. We rely on contributions. And I do that, and so should you. I should use this. I should use this as a little opportunity to point out that if you use Wikipedia, you should pay for Wikipedia. It is a great endeavor. The article is completely right when it says that it has managed to find the perfect tool for getting better and better without getting more and more expensive. The articles are sent, once they are initially vetted in-house, they are sent to experts on their subject. Those experts can read them and make changes as they please, but they have to substantiate the changes that they make. They have to prove it. They can't just put forward their own line. Although it's easy to find Wikipedia entries on minor scholarly subjects where it's clear that the last scholar who wrote a book on that subject is the one who wrote this entry and wrote it just to reflect their own view, their own take on the subject. But even that isn't set in stone. There's nothing in Wikipedia that's set in stone. Anything can be challenged. Anything can be updated. And it's incredibly useful. I am sure that I am not the only person right now in this conversation who uses Wikipedia on a daily basis. And if that's true, it is ethically wrong for you not to pay. So the next time you go there and you see that little box saying, can you pay $1 or $5 or $10, click on $5 and spend it. Get your credit card out and pay. As those boxes on Wikipedia say, every single time they're in a fundraising mode, if only a small fraction of the people who use the site actually did pay a tiny amount of money, $1, $2, $5, they'd be funded forever. Okay, so there you go. Here ended the lesson. So that was those were the written materials. I got the troika of great science fiction and fantasy square-bound periodicals. I got a cowboy romance, and I got book form. But I got one other thing as well. It isn't book related. It isn't book related at all. I got a throw. I thought we'd open it together. This thing, which with my employee discount was like $10, and is apparently nice and big and comfortable. Let's take a look. It comes in a cardboard framing box, but I am, as I've mentioned on this channel, I am always hungry. The music is always too loud, and I am always cold. And so another throw. Let's see what this thing is like. Very minimal packaging like that. Let's see here. Get the cardboard out. Oh, very nice. Look at that. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, great. All right, well, I will just figure out the ins and outs of this, but you've got the softer material on the inside and then a very plush material on the outside. Just a nice little spot blanket. I can use as many of them as I can get. I'll just have to see what it's like, whether or not it sheds, how easy it is to care for, that sort of thing. But it was so cheap that I just went ahead and got it. And that was my it's got all these little plastic ties all over it. Well, I imagine simple use will get rid of a lot of those. But anyway, that was my trip to the bookstore. I got a throw for me cold legs, for me knobby knees, and a bunch of reading material. And I confess, as you can tell already, I dug into the book forum right away. And the parts of it that I haven't read, I'll read right now. And I will be indulging in these things over the next few days. And I will get to this very soon. This may be tonight's book. So there you go. It was a trip to the bookstore. Probably my last trip to a Barnes & Noble in 2020. So I had to share it. But I'm going to wrap this up. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.